Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. The most depressing thing about these stories is that the employee almost always ends up quitting. Nothing's changed or resolved. The mess is there for the next person to deal with. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. Only clock in 5 minutes early? Okay. This was only a small victory at the absolute worst job I've ever had, but it was a victory nonetheless. I worked at a small local bank that was constantly understaffed. I was always forced to work overtime because I had a boss that was getting close to retirement and just didn't give a crap anymore. So I was the one who had to stay behind and help newbies figure out why their tills were $200 short. I asked for a raise, pointing out all the responsibilities she'd been slowly putting on me and no one else, but was denied. On top of that, the customers were disrespectful, and the manager over my boss was the single most awful person I've ever worked under. I'm a hard worker. I'm always trying to go the extra mile, so when my raise was denied, and in a pretty rude manner at that, I had a difficult time pulling myself back so I wouldn't become too jaded. If you pay me the bare minimum, I will do what was expected and not an inch more. Another teller and I had been putting in so much overtime, again short-staffed, that the boss instated a new policy. You can only clock in 5 minutes before the bank opens, or 5 minutes before your time on the floor begins. This works out for a normal teller in the walk-in lobby since the boss opens up the vault and does other startup responsibilities in the morning, but I worked in the drive-thru and had my own vault I was responsible for. So opening the vault, other opening tasks, getting the drive-thru up and ready, counting out my drawer, all had to be done in 5 minutes. Okay, it's doable. But add on top of that a new policy from the president of the bank himself: the drive-thru must be open to serving customers 5 minutes before the lobby opens. I'll never understand why, but them's the rules, and cue malicious compliance. I start clocking in at 7:50 on the dot. That gives me between 7:50 and 7:55 to set up, and then I'm ready to see customers at 7:55. But my boss doesn't change my schedule to reflect this 5-minute difference. After about 2 weeks, I checked my timestamps and noticed she's changed all my clock-in times from 7:50 to 7:55. This place was so petty that they felt the need to steal 5 minutes of my time every day. That's 25 minutes a week, and yes, that matters. I craft the most professional and cold email to my boss explaining why I clock in at the time that I do, pointing out both policies I'm compliant with. I got no response, but my timesheets were changed back the next time I looked. The happy ending to this story is that I was able to find a new job and put in my 2 weeks' notice, with one of those weeks already being a planned vacation. That was the best feeling ever. I would have clocked in 5 minutes early and started getting ready and ignored the drive-thru customers. Let someone complain and let management come to you. Screw them. And our second story. Okay, I'll be your server. This happened to a friend of mine who I shall call Steve, although that isn't his real name. Steve works in a hardware DIY store in a retail park where are loads of shops and restaurants surrounded by a large car park. He has a lunch break at about 1 p.m. every day for an hour, during which time he normally gets a sandwich or something quick, simple, and cheap. On this particular day, back in 2017, he'd arranged to meet his girlfriend for lunch at one of the nearby restaurants and had even ordered the meal in advance. So weekends they arrived, they'd be served pretty quickly. He'd been to the restaurant many times and knew the manager and the waitstaff pretty well. Cast: S. Steve, GF, Steve's girlfriend, K. Entitled Rude Karen, and WS, any of the waiting staff. S and GF had finished their meal and paid the bill, and now GF had gone to the toilet, so S is just waiting for her. There are only a handful of customers at this time. Then K walks in with her kids. She spots an empty table next to SS' table and notices that S is in uniform. She sits down, gets her kids settled while S is just staring out the window. Break's over. Back to work then, she yaps, clapping her hands together to get his attention. S panics, suddenly thinking that he's been there too long and he's actually late. He checks his watch and realizes that it's only 1:30 and he still has 30 minutes. Sorry, he says, but I got a half hour left on my break But she cuts him off, saying with a raised voice, "Well, you can take my order and go back to your break. Hop to it," while aggressively swiping at him, but missing. It suddenly dawns on S that K thinks he works in the restaurant and starts to explain IDWHL, getting as far as, "But I don't," before being cut off again. K shouts, "I don't care if you don't work on your break, I want my order now," and fails again to swipe at him. S carries a notepad and pen with him as they occasionally help him in his job. He whips these out, stands up, and says, "Yeah, sure, why not?" As he does this, he's gesturing to WS not to come to the table for a minute or two, and W's are giggling as they've worked out what he's up to. Even the manager, who's heard K shouting, is cottoned on and he is watching. S listens to K's order while writing on his pad, except he isn't writing her order, but a bunch of random words. At that moment, GF returns, stopping halfway to the table, and sees S is up to some shenanigans, and that the waitstaff and at least a couple of customers are all watching. S finishes taking the order and turns around, intending to go back to his break and sit down just to piss K off, but he sees GF and instead walks towards her. She already has her bag and no jacket anyway, being as it's summer, and rather flamboyantly says, "Are you ready to go, darling?" and proceeds to walk straight out the restaurant, turning around to see K, still sat down, staring daggers at him, and tears off her order from his pad and throws it in the bin by the door. Unfortunately, that's where the story ends, so I don't know in detail how Kay reacted to that, but waitstaff said she went to the bin to dig out her order, shouted profanities at everyone, and left without ordering. I'm kind of surprised, given the nature of Karen's, that she didn't follow him to his work and try to get him fired from there. And our next story. Karen demands I work for store I don't work for. A few weeks ago, I was woken by a phone call at about 5:13 a.m. by some snotty woman demanding I work the weekend when I don't even work for them, or retail for that matter. This is how it all went down. 5:13 a.m., phone wakes me up. "Hello, this is Terry from B-Mart. Lucy, you have to work this weekend." Me trying to grasp reality as my brain's still sleeping and I don't know any Lucy, or this caller Terry. "Hey Terry, you dialed wrong number. Lose it, please." I hang up the phone and almost drift back to sleep when it rings again and I stupidly answer it. "Terry, you hang up on me again, I'll fire your butt. You're to work the weekend or find another job." No, she didn't say but. She said much worse, and now I've decided to have some fun with this. The result was very lifting, I might add. Caller had a southern accent, so no clue how they could be even calling me to begin with. Me, Terry, if you want me in, it's overtime Saturdays, double time Sundays. I want this in writing or I will not come in. Figured this would end the call and I could get back to sleep, and only disturbance would be my daughter's cat, who decided to pay me a visit and dig her claws into my covers, ignoring the fact she's sharpening them on me. I was dead wrong. I had to listen to Terry give me some spiel on company policy for full-timers and openability. I cut her off in mid-sentence. "Terry, I could care less about company policy. You want me to work this weekend? You're paying me what I require and you're putting this in writing. Also, because you annoyed me by waking me up twice, I'll now work double-time Saturday and triple-time Sundays. Take it or leave it. Oh, don't forget, that's $15 an hour. That means $30 an hour Saturdays, $45 an hour Sundays." I never got to finish saying Sunday because this is what happened next. Terry, Why crap. I don't even make $15 an hour. Why the hell do you?" Next thing I know, her yelling attracted other staff, and I can hear yelling in the background of, "Why the hell does she make $15 and I only get $9? With others in the background yelling, "Why is Lucy getting 15? And I could no longer make out who was saying what, other than Terry telling someone I refuse to come in unless I get overtime, which is when some guy takes over the call. "This is Bill, the general manager. Lucy, what's this about not coming in unless you get OT? And where the hell are you getting $15 an hour from?" Me, "You want me in? Those are my terms. Stop calling and waking me." I can hear Bill in the background with all the commotion saying, "That doesn't sound like Lucy. It sounds like a guy." Me, "For that insult, it's now triple time the entire weekend. We have a deal?" Click. It was then my wife wakes up and asks, "What was that all about?" Told her it was work calling me to let me know I had the weekend off. I go back to bed, Kitty sleeping on top purring. Lucy literally just needs to say I wasn't called and show that her number isn't the one that was called. This isn't some movie where the character says, "We don't have time to explain, let's go." And the whole mess occurs because they didn't explain. And our last story. Being petty over a summer vacation spot. Not my story. A friend, after graduating college, got a chunk of land as a graduation gift from his grandfather. Lakefront property, so with help from friends, myself included, and family, we helped him clear bush, trees, and built a nice driveway and small cabin. My contribution was just clearing forest. He had a great little completion weekend party when everything was mostly done. Met some of his neighbors that weekend, which warned him about the Karen on the adjacent property to the right. Anyways, fast forward to a year later, his neighbor to the right shows up and tells him that he'd surveyed his land and built illegally, that his driveway's on their land and part of his cabin is on their land as well. In order to rectify this, he had to remove the driveway, replant the trees removed, and either move his cabin or pay $1,000 a month as land rental if he doesn't move his cabin. My friend did the surveying of the land himself, so at the time he thought maybe he made a mistake and tried to make more beneficial agreement with the neighbor about sharing the land, since it's northern Canada and the properties are only usable in the summer for camping and weekend getaways. But the guy wouldn't budge and told him if he didn't agree to the original terms, he'll see him in court. My friend, realizing he couldn't afford to go to court but could afford a couple $100 to get a government survey done, went with that option. Turns out the neighbor's cabin was a foot on my friend's land, and the neighbor, very nice walkway, stairs to the lake, the beautiful boat launch and dock were all on my friend's property. So what did he do? He told the neighbor that he built illegally on his land, and in order not to go to court over the walkway, stairs, dock, and boat launch were now his, if he saw the neighbor using them, he'd call the RCMP for trespassing. Also, that the neighbor's cabin had to be moved or a payment of $1,000 a month for land rental would be acceptable. A month later, his neighbor moved the cabin, had a large fence built, splitting their properties. The best part is my friend's cabin was an old-school cabin, no electricity, no plumbing. The neighbor cabin was a fully functioning cabin, electricity, running water, and septic tank. If he called my friend's bluff on going to court, he'd probably save money on having to move his cabin. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.